Hello, my name is Jessie Jones, and I am the volunteer coordinator for Coast Watch. This webinar was recorded on Wednesday, May 27th, 2020. And today we talked with Ryan Parker, who is an Oregon beach ranger on the Central Coast. Coast Watch is a mile-by-mile beach adoption program where volunteers take over a mile of the Oregon coast, walk that mile at least 4 times a year, and collect all kinds of information to be shared with volunteers, members, and the general public. We also work to connect our volunteers as scientists up and down the West Coast for more in-depth data gathering. Coast Watch is a program of Oregon Shores Conservation Coalition dedicated for nearly 50 years to protecting the access to our coast, land use, and more. Please consider becoming a member and supporting Oregon Shores and Coast Watch programs. And thanks again for coming to this webinar. We will see you later. Thanks.
So my current title is Beach and Trail Ranger. I was originally Beach Ranger, and before that was just Park Ranger, and so it's very bureaucratic, but it changes, and I embrace those changes as time goes on. So a lot of people say, well, what is marine debris? Marine debris is, can you all see a clear screen here? I just want to make sure. Yep.
Yeah, Ryan, it looks great.
Okay. Man-made stuff in the water, so we'll keep that simple. There are natural flotsam, things that are wooden and coconut fronds and all sorts of things that are around in the world's oceans, but I don't really consider them to be under the umbrella of marine debris. Marine debris is mostly man-made items, inadvertently or intentionally set into the oceanic systems of the world. So there's two main streams, land-based and at sea. So land-based marine debris would be marine debris that originated on land and through a number of hydrological processes, whether it's down a river or over the side of a boat, or over from a creek into a river, into a bay, into an estuary, into the ocean, out a set of jetties. That would be land-based marine debris origination. And then at sea is ocean dumping, inadvertent lost fishing gear, those types of things. We'll go into more detail about that here in a little bit. So here's I get into the geekiness of this a little bit. So sea-based marine debris inputs. Input just means an item that goes off of a boat or other vessel and into the oceanic system. I have these organized not necessarily in frequency. There's not a whole lot of data behind that. I was just sort of picking my brain and highlighting main categories and subcategories of what's out there, and some of these things we see along Oregon's shoreline as they come into either our sandy or rocky shoreline beaches. We have, commercial fishing gear is one of the major slices of the pie. Open ocean, it's one of the biggest components due to shallow sea. Along coral reefs, a lot of gear is lost and ensnared, and then during storms, that ensnared gear is pulled up off reef systems and set into the open ocean, and depending on what current, whether it's the Gulf of Alaska or the California current along the West Coast, it ends up washed against either a beach or a rocky island at some point in its very long lifespan. The sport fishing gear is just gear that's been, you throw your hook out, it gets hooked on something under the water, and you have to cut your line, or a fish breaks a line, those types of things. And obviously the Sumatra, the Banda Aceh tsunami of 2004, and then the Tohoku great earthquake and tsunami in Japan. the question around those tsunami events is, how much marine debris was already there, and we don't really have good numbers on that because the ocean's so vast, especially the Pacific, our biggest ocean in the world. But those two tsunamis highlighted the issue of marine debris and brought it to the forefront of people's minds, especially this 2011 one, because a lot of that tsunami debris was sent across the Pacific to the west coast and of the U.S. and Canada, and maybe brought the topic that people weren't familiar with the volume of marine debris out there and how much washed up, brought that to be a very topical thing for a while as far as media attention. So cruise ships, there's no real international treaty preventing pleasure boats and cruise ships from discharging sewage and solid waste into the ocean. In the United States, the territorial sea is basically to where the Coast Guard patrols. Usually they don't go farther out than about 250 miles. And whatever the Navy does as far as environmental protections, I can't speak to because that's kind of out of my sphere. But the Navy did admit to disking their burned shipborne wastes and sinking those disks, and they've allegedly ceased that practice, but I really couldn't speak to that. So then those are kind of the main ones on that. So then we move on to land, especially wonderful for those of us who tend to get seasick real bad when we go fishing. Marine debris inputs on land, the go-to statistic that kind of brings this home to people is, and this has been truthed out by a number of nonprofits, including the Algalita Marine Research Foundation down in Los Angeles, and then Captain Charles Moore, a pretty famous crusader against plastic pollution. He's out of Marina del Rey. 80% is kind of the gold standard of about how much of all marine debris that's in the ocean is land-based. It makes sense because most of it's produced and cycled throughout the economy and discarded on land is kind of the thinking behind that. So for smaller plastics, you have the rail lines and cargo ship containers. Nurdles are pre-production plastic pellets from which all plastics are colored, heated, extruded, stretched, and otherwise made into all the plastic items we use every day in our lives. Nurdles are particularly endemic and persistent in marine pollution because they resemble fish eggs. They're just small little polypropylene resin pellets, and we'll talk more about those. I think I have a few photos of that. Sewage treatment plants under state law in Oregon aren't required to microfiltrate out clothing microfibers or other plastics that are in treated sewage water, and so those just go straight into the outflows, which along the coast here are usually rivers and estuaries. The solids are, treated further, but a lot of the things that escape your home laundry machines go into the municipal sewer of your area and or your septic system, and that's an emerging bastion of research. Oregon State's doing a bunch of work on microfiber capturing and pre-filtration in washing machines is starting to become demanded by consumers and getting some attention. And so some of the appliance manufacturers are putting in microfiber filters now in new machines. And I would assume that will become a standard pre-filtering option on most most washing machines moving into the future. Obviously, illegal dumping is never good, but it's particularly bad in wetlands and anywhere that's near an ocean outflow. Shellfish farms historically used hemp and bamboo and cotton for their oyster shell cluster ropes, and like everything in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, moved to polypropylene or polyethylene. And a common thing to find on Oregon's beaches are those little tie-offs from oyster farms where they cut the cluster of oysters they're going to harvest or reseed, and the little ropes escape because they're small and very buoyant. Working ports are a source of mostly for heavy metal pollution, and rot out from all the creosote pilings. That's just, the cost of doing business for those ports. They have to have pilings that are water resistant and don't rot out. But so over time, the waterproofing and anti-rotting agents have become more environmentally friendly, more copper-based versus the real heavy, creosotes from days past. They aren't using those anymore, but a lot of them do persist. And railroad ties and old utility poles are very common to find on the Oregon coast, especially in estuaries and near river mouths. As those old ports age out, old private docks age out, and those capture pilings from old logging operations are common to find as they finally rot free and their cables break from corrosion, and down the river they go. Angling gear from riverbanks and lakes. Again, that's just like sport fishing gear. It's just part of the deal. When you go fishing, you're eventually going to lose a lure. The bottom one here is probably something we have a lot more control over, which is highway litter and blowout. One thing about COVID-19 is, a lot of our parks closed and litter was reduced by the number of car travel trips that were reduced as well. And when things started opening up, I started to notice that the Highway 101's right-of-way is once again full of litter. And so we really appreciate groups like Junior Surf Rider that go and do those highway cleanups as part of the ODOT program. Prevention is better than constantly chasing your tail from a lack of behavioral change. So I'm a big fan of prevention. So here we go. Let's fund education. Environmental education has great returns. It's a good investment for all generations, really. So changing consumer behavior means giving consumers empowerment, education, and options at the store. One trend I've noticed is a lot of dairies have gone back to glass milk bottles, which have a deposit, and so there's the economic incentive to reuse it, and if they're returned in a state where they can be sanitized in a machine, then they don't have to use the energy to produce a new glass bottle. Ordinance-based preventative measures have taken a big hit during COVID, but we were making some progress on banning foam clamshells and things like that. Extended producer responsibility is a thing in Europe under their Greenpoint system, where the store that sells a product packaged in plastic or some other recyclable material funds the recycling setup, where they have the different bags for the different types of plastic, and the sorting and the processing and the eventual downcycling of that item is paid for by the producer, by the manufacturer of the product in which the packaging is contained. I wish North America had that sort of system, but that would require congressional action to change container laws and some overhauls at the county health department level that currently do not allow a lot of this extended producer responsibility due to the volume of containers that would be brought back into public spaces. And this is probably an after COVID discussion to be had. For a while, trash from bigger corporations, like a particular fast food restaurant or a particular coffee chain, was doing the "Is This Yours" hashtag campaign, and that caught people's attention for a while. I think that may be a start. I think talking to the board of directors of those companies has more effect than hashtag shaming, but it's starting to become a thing. So maybe you can look those up on your favorite social media streams and see whether extended producer responsibility is an issue or consumer behavior. I think it's a blend. It has to be a blend for it to really make a difference. And then there's extreme value in redesigning products so that they aren't as wasteful and they have less volume or less weight or less plastic overall. industrial compostable non-plastic option like paperboard or hemp board or bamboo press. Those are probably our best bets to keep food safe in supermarkets, but just not use oil-based plastics as much as we're using them now. And consumer feedback, you tell the company what you want and enough in the scale. If they listen to enough people that have positive, understandable and measurable feedback, it's certainly possible that they will change their packaging to make it more environmentally friendly. But you have to give them good options. So for seaward prevention, best practices: train your fishing crew to value taking the waste generated at sea back to port and dispose of it there, rather than over the side, which sometimes I can sit on the beach and watch with binoculars of the over the side technique versus bring it back to port. And the port dock in Newport here has incentives and discounts on waste disposal, and some places it's free. And so that's something I think that we should fund as a state, so that we're limiting how much easily preventable marine debris gets introduced into the system at sea while they're out fishing. We have to remember that the ocean is a wilderness, the biggest wilderness on the globe, and there are millions of square miles that are not patrolled by any World Navy, and it's up to the fishermen's endemic values, their society in which they live, their government of record, and to do the right thing. And sometimes that takes a lot of public pressure, and it takes money, and a lot of countries don't have that for their fishing fleets. And so the wealthier nations probably need to do more about best practices in introducing successful marine debris mitigation programs that don't cost a lot. I know Australia has been doing really well with something called the sea bin, where they put this little vacuum type thing in marinas to get the low-hanging fruit, as you would say, to keep that from going out the jaws and into the open ocean. The territorial sea in the U.S. is 3 miles, or the state territorial sea, and then the Coast Guard outer limit line is 250 miles. The United Nations passes a lot of oceanic protection measures, but they don't have a whole lot of teeth, because not all 194 countries in the world, I think was the last count, are signatories to those UN resolutions. So it's more symbolic. It still keeps it in the media discussions, but I think we need something more than resolutions. And remember that NOAA, their marine debris program, has full-time staff nationwide, and in the Hawaiian Islands included, around 20 full-time employees for the entire country. So they're on a bit of a shoestring budget, but they do great work. So how does weather and currents in marine debris affect accumulation of marine debris and circulation of larger items along the Oregon coast? So Oregon has onshore flow, which means marine debris will come onto the beaches and the rocky shoreline. It tends to be November to May typically, and then we get a longshore flow, longshore currents, where the debris will go along the beach, and if it hits the right microcurrent, it'll come onshore, but mostly it just stays out there. And so what's on the beach and what's out there are vastly different. We're only seeing a small percentage of the overall marine debris burden washing ashore along the Oregon coast. Accumulation zones tend to be south-facing headlands and jetties. So for example, Cape Lookout up in Tillamook County is at the end of a littoral cell. A littoral cell is just a circulatory longshore current where it goes out of a river outflow up to a promontory point like a jetty or headland, west out to sea, and then back south in a circulatory current. So you can imagine them as long ovals. And if you look at the Oregon coast or map of Oregon, there's 11 littoral cells. The first one starts, at the Chetco River in Brookings, and the northernmost one ends somewhere in the Columbia River Bar. Creeks are low points in the beach. That's where the marine debris can go up the highest with the least amount of wave energy. And so creeks and rivers, and creeks have a lot of Pacific willow in them, growing in them, and those tend to trap styrofoam and lighter weight buoyant debris that comes in on storm tides. Let's see here. So county by county marine debris hotspots. So a caveat here, I've patrolled through my career so far pretty much every county except northern Clatsop and Curry. So that's my sphere of knowledge mostly is from the New River up to, well, Cannon Beach, I guess, as far as on beach experience. So I can't say too much about Curry County, but the trends are relatively similar amongst the other 6 counties. So Tillamook has Barview Park on the North Jetty. That tends to have a lot of debris. Sand Lake is one of the dirtiest spots on the coast. Netarts Spit is a long sand spit between Cape Lookout State Park and Netarts Bay. Cape Kiwanda is a south-facing headland. And Wainema Point gets a lot of river down, it's at the southern side of the Nestucca River, and it gets a lot of debris that comes from inland up in a lot of old docks come down the Nestucca, and then fishing gear and buoys and things like that. The bar at the Nestucca River is kind of rough, and because the Nestucca splits and covers so much acreage inland, it tends to get a lot of inland debris coming down there. And since the Lincoln, Yaquina Bay has a lot of old dock, old styrofoam from oyster farms. Thiel Creek is down south of the Newport Airport. And then there's some other places here. Wade Creek's by Beverly Beach. Spencer Creek gets a large accumulation of microplastics because it's a very washed over beach in the winter. The high tide is the cliff line, and it churns and kind of works up the old marine debris in there, and just it gets pretty layered. That's a coho bearing stream, so I spent a lot of time cleaning out Spencer Creek as much as possible to keep the spawning fish have clear passage when they're spawning, and then also the fry to those brightly colored plastics that research is saying that they might be interested in trying to eat those for thinking that there's some sort of food or bug eggs. Anyway, in Lane County, Baker Beach has a big microplastic accumulation. Sutton Creek, it oxbows, and so there's a lot of little dump outs where the small plastics from Sutton Lake go out, and then they're mixed in with all the beach debris. Interestingly, Sutton is becoming a new hotspot for successful western snowy plover nests because there's a bunch of Forest Service land there that's undeveloped. And then the flat beach from the Oregon Dunes day use down to 10 Mile River in Coos County is our most productive plover beach, and also one of the most common accumulation sites for marine debris because it's a very, very long sandy beach, and there's no offshore reef there that has a whole lot of height to it, and so the marine debris that's floating on the surface and floating below the water column, down low in the water column, is not impeded or caught as it washes ashore during the onshore flow from November to May. Douglas County, Taconic Creek has a huge marine debris burden there because the creek changes so much and exposes old debris that's been buried in the shifting sands. And then the North Umpqua Jetty is angled just so where it's at the end of a literal cell because there's a jetty system there. And the South Jetty also has quite a bit because it gets a lot of scour tides where the tide comes in during the storms in the winter and scours the beach sideways, exposing old debris and dumping it on the beach. And then Coos Bay North Spit from the FAA towers. Sorry, the FAA tower halfway out the sand spit to the North Jetty of Coos Bay there's always marine debris to clean up out there. So kind of, this is maybe pre-COVID, but basically this is some of the things I do large debris removal, whether I need an excavator or crane, like full boats. We've got a lot of boats from the tsunami that have washed up over the years. I think probably it's at least 3 dozen so far on the North Coast that have come in. We've had a few this year, and there was just one that an oyster tender boat from the tsunami that was tied to that just washed up at Bullard's Beach. I think about a month ago. Maybe it was more recent than that, on the north jetty of the Coquille. A lot of trail work because the governor tasked us with creating better access and more contiguous aspects of the Oregon Coast Trail, which goes along the beach through a lot of state park properties. I spent a lot of my time doing invasive plant removal on our properties and with county and state partners. In the summer, when the sand dries, which, as you know, around here is probably July to September, I do some sifting. And previously, I was doing a lot of school groups and outreach, school visits to talk to the youth about marine debris and park ranger careers. And we do a lot of partnerships. I specifically spend a lot of time at our native plant nursery in Beaver Creek and work with the Mid-Coast Watershed Council on that. And then obviously, as Jesse mentioned, I do a lot of work with the Western Snowy Plover Habitat Conservation Plan and doing outreach and in the field interpretive on the spot type talks about the plover and its plight. So what are the gaps to fix the state marine debris response? And I would say that the word state is interchangeable with federal. With all agencies, there's always that stepping on toes concept, so that we got to clean up the jurisdictions. We need to determine what each state agency wants to do and what it is needed to do, and that may be somewhat that's legislature needs to determine and put into statute, who's in charge of marine debris in the river, because right now it's me, but at least on the Aquinnah, but that's not sustainable unless you get me into a good human cloning trial. So derelict vessels, that's Oregon State Marine Board and Coast Guard, but we've written grants and state lands is involved, so that's kind of a complicated one. Shellfish farming leases, currently that's managed by Department of State Lands, Department of Land Conservation and Development, Oregon Fish and Wildlife, and DEQ, and so all those agencies play a role, and I think that needs to be streamlined so that land leases of public waterways are better policed and produce a better result, not just for the leasee, so that they have fewer hurdles to jump through, but that the environmental protections for everyone else besides the leasee is better protected. And I think there is some work to be done there. And then as far as river dumping and ocean dumping, I think for most agencies, most dumping fines are Oregon administrative rules, which means they're administrative and not prone to criminal prosecution. And I think we need to change those to revised statutes so we can get support and assistance from our law enforcement partners to prosecute those people in a criminal way rather than just in an administrative fine, monetary only fines. Oops, hold on a second here. Oh, and then Oregon is, as you know, leans libertarian on insurance rules. Private watercraft are not required under Oregon law to be insured. And docks that are built are grandfathered in if they were built before 2019. They're not required to have insurance. And so when docks get broke off, fixed docks, static docks are broken off during storms and rivers flood, it's state agencies and ultimately the taxpayers who pick up that bill. And I think that needs to be borne by the dock owner rather than the taxpayers. So the big ones that can give you a lot more information about marine debris and groups that I highly respect and wish I was closer to LA to collaborate with them more. Five Gyres, and they're on the internet with fivegyres.org, and Al Galita is doing some great. They do a lot of work in the public schools in the Los Angeles metro area, and around California, where they do salmon fry growing in classrooms and all sorts of stuff that hopefully can start back up in the fall when hopefully we do more in-person education. Algalit is great, and they're always looking to work with other groups. And then Plastic Pollution Coalition is sort of a global one that's has a lot of celebrity buy-in, and although I'd be wary of some of that, I think there's a lot of wealthier actors and actresses who contribute to Plastic Pollution Coalition, and it's all about, you know, grassroots organization, and that really helps. And then, as you know, as you see on the bottom, current legislation at the federal level, President Trump did actually sign the 2018 Save Our Seas Act, which is an update and a reauthorization for funding of the 2006 Marine Debris Act amendments. And it's very wonky, and I won't go into it because I don't even understand it, because it's a multi-hundred-page bill. But give credit where credit is due. Any legislator that signs a bill that helps give teeth to marine debris law and prevention is I give them props for that particular action. So that's my work email on my cell phone. Feel free to reach out. I run a private Instagram. Mostly these days I'm taking pictures of iris, because Oregon iris are in full bloom right now, which is our native, and along with a bunch of other wonderful wildflowers that grow along our coastal balds, which are, you know, in peril, but luckily state parks owns a lot of those properties, and that prevents development in very threatened ecosystems, which is great. And then this is our website, but it's probably changed since March, so you just have to Google Oregon State Parks, and then there's an Ocean Shores tab, which talks about our mission and our work on the beach, and then what people can do to get involved. And then I have a little bonus slide here. These are the things I find the most. And so with plastics, you got the beverage bottles, the strapping bands from bait boxes. Bait's very heavy and put on boats frozen, and as they open the wax cardboard box, inside is bait in a plastic bag, and to support the box, to keep it from the bait from falling out of the box, they put strapping bands around there, and those are single-use items that a lot of people call them sea lion catchers, because if a pinniped swims into them, they're very curious animals. You've seen probably where they'll eventually, you know, perish from the strapping band digging into their neck flesh. So that's pretty awful. But some fishermen cut them and throw them over, and some processor boats cut them and throw them over. But I find about equal amounts of them that are cut and uncut on the beach here. Beverage bottle caps. Find more caps and bottles. My theory there is that overseas processors can't use the caps because the caps are made of multiple kinds of plastic, which makes them really hard to recycle, and those just go back into the ocean. Like I said from before, ropes from fisheries and aquaculture. Styrofoam, by that I mean expanded polystyrene foam, not the brand, but the category and the brand are confusing. So what I mean by that is just foam containers and foam blocks, pill foam and pressed foam. So pill foam's like from docks, where it's got kind of kernels, and then pressed foam is like what they make those takeout containers that in this day and age, hopefully no one will continue to use into the future. Shotgun shells and wadding, hunting debris. So the wadding holds the shot, and the shotgun shell holds the wadding with the shot in it. And when the shotgun hits the firing pin and all that goes out the end of the muzzle, recapturing is unlikely. And especially around hunting season on the refuges along the Oregon coast, there'll be a lot of waddings on the beach October, November, after waterfowl season is complete. And the solution there is really just a redesign into a corn-based wadding that would biodegrade in seawater, but bioplastic in that umbrella of products doesn't seem to want to biodegrade in cold seawater, so that's going to require some retooling on a pretty grand scale. The usual, you can see all these. Hang on a second here. Oops. I got so I find a lot of pallets on the beach for construction, and then like I said, treated lumber and railroad ties from old docks and piling assemblies, and then interestingly, in the spring, I find a lot of stairways for private residences because they, especially in sandy beaches, if you put your stairway down in the winter, the scour tides come sideways and tear the stairway off of the mount, and off it goes to be found by your friendly state parks beach ranger. That's pretty much what I had on that.
Great, Ryan. That was really informative. That was excellent, actually. I learned a lot. We did have one kind of question comment from Anna, and she talks about Surfrider's shotgun wad watcher. Did you want to talk about that at all? Do you know about that, or?
Well, I've heard about it from her, but I'll admit I haven't spent the time because I was using her Relola app for a while, and I just get so many of them. It's hard for me at work to properly categorize them. So for our esteemed citizen scientists, though, that would be great to get that data captured through her portal. Maybe she could speak to that.
Yeah, Anna, I think I can let you speak if you would like to. We have another question. So yeah, I think if you answer or raise your hand, I can unmute you if you would like to speak to that program. We have another question from an anonymous attendee. Is there a central place to find data from shore sampling and cleanup efforts?
Well, so I'm into year 8 of tallying what I personally lay hands on of my debris. Eventually, I'm going to turn that into a get into graduate school free card, if that works out. But so I use the International Coastal Cleanups data card because that's sort of a standardized card, and I write down. I'll show you my folder. It's I have detailed files here. So this is 8 years of monthly tallies of marine debris. I have to digitize this at some point if you know of any board interns. But it's going to be months of work, and a separate pile is non-categorized debris because I find a lot of things on there I think are worth noting, but they aren't on the list. But what's good about the ICC list is that it captures the main categories in ways even weekend warriors can understand and tally. And I know Surfrider does a good job, and Solve as well, about tallying those just to get an idea around something people can wrap their heads around as far as numbers of things. Because the scale of some products that show up on our beaches is really really something. For example, some months I find 50 or 60 beverage pallets, and that might not sound like a lot, but those things are those can weigh upwards of 60 pounds, and they're full of nails, and so I remove them to prevent them from being burned in beach fires, and therefore prevent a number of beachgoers stepping on those mending plates in the pallets. Are razor sharp, and I've had to render first aid to a number of people over the years that have stepped on them. And so even just pallets, that's something that you see, especially in Tillamook, you'll see piles of things say free pallets. Well, they're not free at the 10,000 foot view. They might be free at the 500 foot level. But the ICC card, I think, is great. They've kind of modernized it recently, and I kind of use, I'm old school. I use the older version that just has the categories, because in an 8-hour work shift, it wouldn't be possible for me to count out, hundreds of plastic fragments, but a weekend cleanup, that would certainly be valuable to be able to count every little thing you find, versus just the categories. It's a scale thing. Some days I'll find 100 to 200 plastic bottles, especially down around the North Umpqua jetty after a storm. There'll be a piece of debris every 6 inches, and you can't expect them to be able to, patrol for 4 hours and then drive back and sort all that out in an 8-hour shift. It's That's the unfortunate part is I can't capture as much of those tallies as I'd like, but I've gotten enough to where I think it's a legitimate thing to present, possibly at one of your future conferences.
Yeah, that would be great. And you're just one person doing that. And I also know that the Coastal Observation and Seabird Survey team have some tallies. Also, NOAA Marine Debris. Andrew Mason was one of our first guests for this, and he shared a map as well, where you can get online and you can see some of these tallies as well. Let's see, Jill says, how can we help you, Ryan? I pick up and remove trash every time I'm on the beach. Do you need help while you are working? And is it possible to join you? Also, huge thanks for gathering my trash at Schooner South. Thanks, Jill.
Yeah, I think it's a hard capture to realize, despite there being a half. Historically, there were 3 beach rangers, and now there's about 8, because they've kind of reorganized the program. But even when I was doing patrol from Bay Ocean down to Coos Bay North Spit, I would encounter locals that had filled their own vehicles with trash and taken them out to paved roads, especially there at Sutton and Silk Coos. So like the list of thanks is endless, and folks like Jill exemplify environmental stewardship on a micro scale, because that model is really our best hope at capturing what's the ocean has burped out. The next level would be to fill Congress with people who recognize the value of the danger of marine debris and its effect on the economy and the environment and human health.
Mm-hmm.
And that would be the long-term solution, is a legislative shift to environmental protections, in the sense of not a legislative process, but a protectionary process that not only stimulated economic activity in a sustainable way, but provided jobs and internships and things like that on a scale that NOAA's program can't be expected to make too many headwinds in when they have 20 full-time employees for the entire country. And with that, I will have to say that the highlight of my career was getting to meet Nir Barnett, and I'm so happy he was able to retire when he did. But he put together some conferences where there were folks like myself from the 4 western states and the 4 coastal states and BC, and those meeting of the minds really are what's going to drive state, local, and federal policy, is getting out the word and just getting out there yourself and seeing the issues and understanding the issues in your own community, because that's kind of the baseline of knowing about an issue, is how does it affect you, how does it affect your family and the town you live in,
Mm-hmm.
and the Oregon coast at large. So thanks so much. And I guess if you have a penchant for gambling, that's kind of what state parks needs now, is lottery revenue. So feel free to
Yeah,
find some lucky numbers.
When I first asked you to come and speak at the conference, COVID had not happened. Quarantine was not happening. And you and I were talking today before I turned on the broadcast button about some changes that are happening. And my question is, and you won't be on the beach as much anymore. Is that
Well, I don't know if that's 100% accurate. When I said it's getting weird, it's because our agency is in a big deficit like everyone else is, and so when our department makes most of its money off camping fees, and so we're still obligated under a lot of rules, under the thing for the plovers, the habitat conservation plan, and the Land and Water Conservation Fund, which is federal money that Representative DeFazio has always been a champion of, for those of you who happen to be in District 4 down in Lane County. That helps provide, that's a big funding source for us to do wetland restorations. And our natural resource specialist, I'm more worried for her than I am for me, because I'm kind of campground tied. But the natural resource side of things during COVID, I think may take a little bit of a hit. I sure hope I'm wrong, but
Mhm.
wetland restorations benefit all, but it's not exciting, it's not flashy, and you won't hear about that much in the situation room. But those topics of healthy ecosystems and wetland restorations and removing invasive plants, those are multi-generational benefits.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that part of the state parks mission, I want to hope I'm last week I spent my whole week cutting Scotts Brim at Yaquina Bay, and so I'm doing what I can, but I'm just one guy. So
Yeah, you are.
stay tuned. I really don't want to speak for the agency because I don't know, because they don't. It's complicated because it's going to take some action by the governor's office. It's going to take some action by the legislature to see how previously approved, biennial budgets. We're in year 2 of a 2-year budget, and so, or year 1.5, kind of, because July 1st is the end of the first year of the biennium.
Mm-hmm.
And so you never know what's going to happen in 2 years, and
Yeah.
who would have thought,
Yeah.
But
Well,
I would say that all of us that are assigned to beach duties are still available, and don't stop contacting us, I guess, and we can maybe have a queue of concerns and things to take a look at, so that when time allows, we can kind of sort out what the natural resource and all those priorities are. Because remember that in summer, don't get a lot of marine debris because that longshore flow, offshore flow, and the currents are different, and so
mm-hmm.
that will, in a way, that's a good cushion, because that means we don't really have to, we can get ourselves through the summer and revisit a lot of the agency's mission, and and see what happens. But I got reassigned to a park that's next to a beach access, so I don't think it'll be unreasonable to be out there relatively frequently, considering the people who normally do all the landscape maintenance, all got laid off, and so
Okay.
it'll be a blend.
Yeah, it will be. We'll need to I think depend on volunteers and citizens also. I know that there is sort of, I don't know if it's a hashtag, but it's a messaging point that's starting to get out there by the state parks that is pack it in, pack it out.
Yeah, absolutely. We're trying to drive good visitor behavior. I mean, that only goes so far.
Mm-hmm.
Empathy is learned in the family sphere, I'd say, and environmental stewardship is sparked by a number of sources. And so what your organization does is of the utmost importance to remind people that this summer is going to be a little different than last summer, but what an opportunity to network more and help each other out more, and just appreciate nature more.
Mm-hmm. That's a good message.
It's been a different spring for sure.
Yeah, that's a really, really great message, Ryan. Thank you. Does anyone?
It's really going to cut back on my agate hunting time, I have to admit. That's a joke.
Does anyone have any other questions for Ryan? Oh, Anna raised her hand. Wonderful. Okay, let's see if I can get in here and allow to talk. Unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yes, Anna. Great. Thank you. We can.
Thanks, Jesse. Hi, Ryan. Nice to see you. Thanks for everything that you're doing. I just wanted to, we could totally take this offline and I'll email you some information. But in the last 15 months, in the last 15 months, about 70,000 shotgun wads have been logged into the Surfrider Shotgun Wad Watcher. We went live with it January of 2019. And basically it's all across the Northern Hemisphere and almost every waterway that people are willing to log them in, and also in Australia and New Zealand. And my guess is they're pretty much everywhere. It's just a matter of getting the word out. And if you let me know when you finally do get to present this, I can send you an updated number so that you have accurate numbers before you go to present. And I just
Sure,
wanted to let you
that'd be
know
great.
that, yeah, and there are a couple of manufacturers that are making what they claim to be marine or biodegradable shotgun wads. So I can send you those as well so that you're aware of what they're trying to do. And I think it's a matter of the larger manufacturers not wanting to spend more money to retool and to do this until the pressure is on them, and either there's legislative incentives or tax incentives to do the right thing.
I have a question about the shotgun wads myself, because I find a lot of them, and I haven't ever done that kind of hunting before. Do they drop from the gun when you shoot where you're landing, or do they wash in? Do they go? Are they shot out over the water and then they wash in?
Yeah, so the shell comes out the shotgun itself and lands at the feet, and most people pick those up, not all.
Okay.
And then the firing pin gets pushed through with the firing pin's brass, and that goes out with the wadding, which holds the bird shot, and all three of those things go out the end of the shotgun and toward whatever they're aiming at.
Okay.
And as the shot is released from the wadding out the barrel, the wadding drops wherever that is, in a marsh or over a lake or whatever, and the shot goes wherever it's aiming at. And then so Anna's completely right. In a perfect world, you wouldn't have to shame a company for a bad or wasteful product, but we are where we are. And so the retooling, yeah, that's on them. They need to eat that cost, because there's a they're endemic. They're all over. They're in estuaries. I find them in Alsea Bay, way up, east of the bridge. They're all over.
Yeah, I find them all over too.
And I'm not against bird hunting. And bird hunting is an important conservation tool in the toolbox. But what best practices come into play here, and we need to give a round of applause to those pioneers that are doing the right thing where the rest of the industry isn't. And so I think that's an important part of it too. When you see a company doing the right thing, then give them a pat on the back.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Anna, for that information. I know, Ryan, I noticed that you said that the biodegradable ones, they don't degrade in this cold ocean water, and that's very true. A number of years ago when I started finding them, I did find a company that made biodegradables, but they just really don't degrade, as a lot of other products don't. You need a lot of heat for that to happen. And I think another good campaign would be to encourage these hunters to pick them up, just to pick them up. That's all they would have to do. So that's a good message to get out there as well, I think.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And range areas and the one thing about hunting is the move away from, for waterfowl anyway, to a stainless steel shot certainly was better for wetlands, because the filter feeders like flamingos and those types of birds and some geese species that filter feed out the side of their mouth, those are the ones getting all the lead poisoning, and that spurred the whole industry to re-examine lead poisoning from ammunition and target shooting. And it seemed that like the Ducks Unlimited pushed, this is a long multi-generational thing, but what hasn't happened is a push from inside the target shooting community to go to a lead-free ammunition. And on the city council, I asked the chief of police to prioritize non-lead ammunition for target shooting for their qualifying requirements under state law, and I haven't gotten any buy-in. The argument is always it costs more. Well, that being, but there's 3 state police old target ranges in the county, and they're all going to require pretty heavy, expensive mitigation to dig out those hillsides and get all that lead out. So again, that cost is borne by the taxpayer. And I'm not trying to sound like Bill Sizemore here, but the ones with an environmental compass shouldn't pay for the ones who don't, and that's kind of where we're at now. You know what I mean?
It's very
so. Why don't we just subsidize research into better, safer, less polluting lead-free ammo, because we all gain from that being a mainstream product. It's education too. I think initially, I remember when I first started in parks, it was '08, and it was the first summer of like $4 gas, and people flipped their lids and got all mad about it. But now it's at buck 89 in Corvallis, and people are still mad about gas prices. So maybe it's not really about the number.
Yeah.
It's a perceived complaint. And so with bird hunting and all those things, you know, I don't know about other people, but you miss a lot more than you hit. And so capturing that into the cost of the product would certainly be better than what we have now.
Yeah, it definitely would be. And we know too that when we pick things up, people can take them home, they go into a landfill, and they don't end up in our oceans. And so it's just really good to encourage people to pick up their trash when they're out there. So does anyone else have a question here? We're going to be closing it up pretty soon and saying goodbye to Ryan, and then I will be sticking around a little bit if anybody wants to hang out and talk or ask any questions. Ryan, I loved your presentation, and I really liked how you went into the hot spots too of the counties. That was a super interesting slide.
Once you see something, it's really hard to unsee it. And one of my, I feel very lucky to have done what I've been doing for the Oregon coast as someone who's lived in Oregon most of his life and gotten to see the different parts of the coast, because we are really lucky that you can drive from one county to the next and have a completely different beach experience. The topography is different, the tide pools are different, the people are different, and I mean that in a good way. The trails are different, the birding is different. It's really something. I mean, in 300 and something miles, 331 miles, you can have 10 different experiences in one road trip, you know. And
yeah,
I'm particularly partial to the South Coast just because of all the geology down there. But
yeah, absolutely.
So, it's really neat.
You all can help Ryan and our other beach rangers just by remembering, when you take a walk on the beach, just to pick things up. Always remember to have a bag in your pocket or in your backpack or in your purse when you're taking a walk. Just a good thing to remember. We can't. Right now, a lot of places aren't allowing us to bring in our own bags because of the virus into stores, but we can remember to bring those down to the beach and pick things up. Looks like we have another question.
I love questions.
Well, it might be more of a comment. She says, yeah, strongly urge to take fuller advantage of the media presentation by including images and maps. And yes, I definitely agree. That was from Kristen. Thank you, Kristen. And Ryan does have a lot of great photos. I would definitely go to his Instagram page at Beached Taro, right? BEACHEDTARO.
That's BEACHTARO.
Okay, beach taro. Okay. Ryan, I do want to ask, where does all that beach debris, the marine debris that you pick up, where does that all go?
Well, so I remove it either by side-by-side ATV or pickup, and or on foot in a lot of places, especially Lane County. Most of the Lane County beaches are remote or rocky shorelines. And so it ends up back at a shop facility, which we share with ODOT, and then goes into a big 30-yard dumpster, and then Doll Disposal takes that to Coffin Butte, which is the regional landfill in Camp Adair in Benton County. And that landfill serves, I believe, 7 or 8 counties. And currently the inter-county governments in the Willamette Valley and the Oregon coast all rely on that landfill, because the non-hazardous landfill in McMinnville was capped because it was at capacity. And so that was the other big landfill in the southern and central Willamette Valley. Most of Portland's trash goes to the one in Arlington. Had a lapse there. And so the Coffin Butte landfill is run by Republic Waste Company, and we got to go on a tour of it recently, and they're expecting that to fill out in the early 2040s, and there's no funding or siting of an alternative, and so waste reduction is going to save us all a lot of money on our monthly garbage rates, because Plan B is going to be who knows where it'll be, what county it'll be in, and as one might imagine, with a new landfill location, there's the NIMBY factor is real and fully understandable.
Right.
I think the solution is reducing consumer waste and reducing packaging and all those things. But we got to have people representing us that care about those issues and are willing to create legislation to that effect. And that's really where it has to lie, is at the upper levels of government, to hear from the people what we need, and that is, focusing on waste reduction.
Yeah.
That starts grassroots, but it can't stay grassroots to have a systemic effect.
Yeah, that's a very, very good message to share, and also a hard reality, knowing that our landfills are filling up and what happens then. So
it'll be great for archaeologists in a couple hundred years.
Yeah, exactly. Or 1,000 even, because we know plastic seems to last forever. So, well, thank you, Ryan, so much for all
no problem.
you and for being with us tonight. And we look forward. Thanks for giving a shout out to sharing the Coast Conference, which, yes, we hope will definitely hope. Well, actually, we don't know, but hopefully it will happen in the spring. If not, we might do something creative like what we've been doing with these webinars. And actually, to the point of plastic, Coastwatch is partnering with Surfrider Foundation and here on the North Coast, the Cape Falcon Marine Reserve, to show and broadcast the story of plastic, which Ryan and I were both able to see a preview in Salem right before the quarantine.
Yeah, that was like my last big night out.
Yeah, same here. Yeah. But this is an incredible film that really shows the impact to humans around the world. There have been a lot of amazing films about wildlife and the effects on the ocean and the effects to sea creatures. This film really focuses on human beings and what human beings are experiencing and what their communities are like, how they're dealing with this plastic waste. It's an excellent film, very educational. This is going to be on June 18th. So keep a lookout in the social media for that. I think we have 100-person cap on that, but that may be extended if we get more people. But please keep a lookout for that, everyone. That will be next month. And I'm looking forward to that. And I wanted to remind everybody that's out there, if you are not a Coast Watcher yet and you would like to be, please contact me, Jessie, at OregonShores.org. That's JESSE at OregonShores.org. And also, we have had more signups for marine debris surveys. So if you would like to do a survey on your mile, either with Coast, that's a Coastal Observation and Seabird Survey team, or with NOAA's Marine Debris Survey. I train on those NOAA surveys, and then a Coast representative comes down from Washington and trains on those Coast surveys. So if you would like to be involved in a survey and start to contribute to the numbers and to the tallies, that is definitely a need. And for all of you that are still with us tonight, I want to encourage you to please spread the word about consumer habits, spread the word about buying more in bulk, spread the word about just consuming less plastic overall, so that we can help everyone, all of us who live here, our beach rangers, our visitors, our animals, and just to keep being vigilant about these things. Continue to educate yourself. Ryan mentioned some excellent organizations, Algalita being one of them. Most of those were not in Oregon. We do have, I know that Surfrider is working really hard in Oregon on the plastic issue. Coastwatch partners with them. last year and this year also, we were working on something called the Rise Above Plastic Pollution, and we did a number of events. I know Fawn Custer, who had my position before me, was going into the schools, and Surfrider also goes into the schools, as well as me, talking about this and how people can have better behaviors toward this kind of a thing. Did you have something you wanted to add, Brian, there?
Probably not this summer, but the summer after, I kind of want to start a program here on the Central Coast for the Portland-centric visitors about like a summer sifting series where we go and use some of Mark Ward's sifters on different beaches in Oregon.
That's right. Yeah.
OPB did a thing on his product. It's an electrostatic sifting screen that the plastic adheres to, and I obviously can't do it by myself, so I have my own boxes that I built.
Mm-hmm.
You can build your own sifter out of 1x3 and aluminum window screen. But anyway,
That's yes.
maybe we can revisit that after next year's conference. And it's a fun window. It's in the summer on the beach is neat because we have some resurgence of some rare beach focused plants that are starting to recover.
Mm-hmm.
Chief among them, pink sand verbena. It's starting to appear, and I've been GPS tracking that plant's recovery. It's pretty exciting stuff, and so sifting plastic and looking at plants, I'll plant that seed, to use a bad pun there.
Yeah, that's true.
And we can look forward to that next summer. Probably not this summer, but the summer after, for sure.
Yeah, I don't know if any sifting is going on. Yeah, what you're referring to there is, Mark Ward's group, the Sea Turtles Forever. Mark has created and ships them around the United States. He's sifting microplastics. So the stuff that is just tiny, that it's really hard to pick up if you're going out for a beach cleanup. I know that the North Coast Surfrider, which I chair, we have purchased some of those, and other groups along the coast, I think maybe almost all the Surfrider chapters have some of those. And those sifters can only happen in the summer months because the sand has to be dry. So I am, I encourage people to keep a lookout for that. And Jill has reminded me about asking for volunteers. Yes, I wanted to remind everyone to continue to volunteer in your area, on your beach, for citizen science activities, including marine debris pickups. And I think I'm going to close this with saying that on Monday we have a morning tide pool ecology webinar at 11 o'clock on Monday morning. And so if you would like to join us, I'll be sending out an invite to those of you who would like to be there. And again, my name's Jessie, I'm with Coast Watch, and thank you for joining. And Ryan, thank you very, very much.
Yeah, no problem. I enjoyed it anytime. And if Anna wants us to email my state email address, it's in the presentation there. Ryan.Parker@Oregon.gov. Thanks for all you do, Anna. And thanks, Jessie.
Yeah.
Y'all have a great evening.
Ryan.Parker@Oregon.gov.
Yes.
And we'll see Ryan. Maybe hopefully I'll see you this summer in person, maybe 6 feet away down the Central Coast.
maybe 10.
Maybe 10.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Okay. Good night, everybody. Thanks for sticking around. Bye.